Coffee hasn't been this expensive in decades. In just 12 months, the average price of roasted coffee in U.S. grocery stores surged 41%, rising from 6.47 to 9.43 per pound. And for millions of daily drinkers, the shock feels personal, like the Walmart shopper in Indiana, who discovered that his 38-ounce tub of Maxwell House had nearly doubled in price to $21.44 in under a year. That moment, captured in a spontaneous TikTok video, reflects what countless Americans are feeling right now. The simple question hanging in the air is this: how did the world's most beloved morning drink suddenly become a luxury? If coffee literally grows on trees, why does a basic cup at your local cafe now cost $3.57 on average? And why did the US slap tariffs on imported coffee, roll them back, then quietly remove them altogether? Yet the price you see on the shelf stubbornly refuses to drop. Even stranger, how are futures markets hitting levels we haven't seen since the 1970s, while the very farmers who grow your morning cup say they're still losing money? You've probably felt this yourself. Maybe you walked into your regular cafe expecting the usual price, only to notice your go-to latte has gone up again. Or you picked up your favorite bag of beans at the grocery store and thought, didn't this used to be a couple of bucks cheaper? These moments of confusion aren't random. They're signals that something much bigger is happening behind the scenes. To understand how a simple cup of coffee became tangled in global economics, politics, and weather disasters, we need to step back in time and trace the story from the roots of the coffee tree to the prices you're facing today. Let's go back and see how this all began. To understand why your coffee is suddenly draining your wallet, you have to step back into its past. Coffee has always lived at the mercy of nature and geopolitics, long before it ever reached your kitchen counter. From its beginnings in the ancient forests of Ethiopia to the rise of massive Brazilian plantations, every major price shock in history has been driven by just two forces: weather and trade policy. If you've ever wondered why your parents talk about the coffee crisis of the old days, here's why. In the 1970s, a brutal frost wiped out huge portions of Brazil's crop, and global prices exploded almost overnight. Then in the 1980s, when international coffee agreements fell apart, the market swung wildly for years, making prices unpredictable for both farmers and consumers. Now compare that to what you've been experiencing recently. Walking into the store and realizing coffee costs more this month than it did last month. Fast forward to 2024 and 2025, and you'll see history repeating itself almost beat for beat. Droughts scorched farms in one region, heavy rains drowned crops in another, and political decisions layered even more pressure on the supply chain. All of these forces collided, pushing coffee into its steepest and most relentless price climb since the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics started tracking the data in 1980. So, when you feel that pinch at the register, you're not imagining it. You're living through the latest chapter of a very old economic story. If you've ever looked at a bag of coffee and wondered why something so small can cost so much, here's the part most people don't see. To produce just 1 pound of coffee, farmers need more than 500 cherries, and each cherry holds only 2 tiny seeds. Coffee plants themselves take years to mature, which means farmers invest time, labor, and money long before they see a single dollar in return. And if you've ever tasted a truly great single origin coffee from Kenya, Colombia, or Ethiopia, you've already experienced what slow growth does. Those high-altitude plants ripen gradually, creating the fruity, floral flavors that coffee lovers chase. But the trade-off is tough. Slow, growing coffee means fewer harvests, more risk, and greater vulnerability when droughts, floods, or heat waves hit. Think about it like this. You might spend 5 minutes brewing your morning cup, but the beans went through weeks, even months, of work before reaching you. After the cherries are picked, often by hand because machines can't tell ripe from unripe, they are sorted, depulped, fermented, washed, dried for up to 14 days, milled, grated, and finally roasted. If you've ever burned a batch of cookies at home, imagine the stakes when a single mistake during roasting can ruin hundreds of pounds of beans. Every step adds cost. Every mistake destroys value. and every unexpected climate event threatens the entire chain. So when you're sipping your coffee and wondering why it's getting pricier, remember, this isn't just farming. It's chemistry, craftsmanship, logistics, and risk management all rolled into one, and every link has become harder and more expensive to maintain. When you trace the price of your morning cup back through the global economy, you start to see how fragile the entire system really is. The first cracks appeared in 2024, when Brazil and Vietnam, the two giants of global coffee production, were hit with a brutal combination of severe drought and heavy rains. Yields plunged long before the US even thought about tariffs. If you've ever gone to the store during a supply shortage and found shelves half empty, that's essentially what happened on a global scale. Coffee supply tightened sharply, and the market felt it instantly. Then futures markets took off like a rocket. Coffee futures jumped from £2,000 in May 2024 to £4,000 a pound by April 2025, one of the most dramatic surges in decades. Futures aren't abstract numbers. Importers and roasters use them as the benchmark for what they pay. So when futures double, their costs double. And when their costs double, eventually your retail price doubles. Maybe you've seen it firsthand. That bag of beans you always buy for $9.99 suddenly showing up at $13.49 with no explanation. This is the explanation. Just as the market was tightening, the US government poured gasoline on the fire. In April 2025, new tariffs hit coffee imports 10% on Latin America, 20% on Asia, and a staggering 50% on Brazil. Even though these tariffs didn't last long, retail coffee prices still climbed about 21% during that period. And after the White House rolled back every remaining duty in late November, nothing on the shelves went down. That's because retail prices always lag behind wholesale adjustments, sometimes by months. You've probably felt this frustration yourself. Prices go up fast, but they come down painfully slow. But here's the part that surprises most people. Even with coffee becoming more expensive for you, the farmers growing it still aren't winning. Globally, 95% of coffee farms are run by smallholders, and a 2019 study found that 44% of them live in poverty. Commodity Arabica might sell for only $1 to $2 per pound. Even specialty farmers like Joseph in Kenya, who produce high-quality beans, receive just 3 he per pound. They say they need 4.55 just to survive. Meanwhile, that same coffee can sell for $22.50 in a US store. So while you're paying more than ever for coffee, many of the people growing it are earning less than ever. The price is high, but not for the people who actually pick the cherries. When you ask why coffee is suddenly so expensive, the truth is that no single villain is responsible. The entire system is cracking at every level. Climate disasters shrank global supply, futures markets doubled their prices in less than a year, and production costs for roasters, from labor to packaging to shipping, quietly climbed behind the scenes. All of that would have been enough to push prices higher. But then the tariffs hit, and everything spun out of control. Here's the part most people don't realize. Tariffs didn't just nudge coffee prices upward, they detonated them. When the US slapped a 10% tariff on Latin America, 20% on Asia, and a staggering 50% on Brazil, it wasn't just a political headline. These tariffs landed on the very countries that supply the beans in your grocery store and the espresso in your cafe. Almost overnight, importers were paying dramatically more, roasters were scrambling to rewrite their cost sheets, and cafes were quietly bumping up their menu prices. You might have noticed that your usual 3.25 drip coffee suddenly became 3.57. That wasn't imagination, that was policy hitting your cup. But here's where the controversy starts. The tariffs were temporary, and yet the prices stayed high. Even after the White House rolled everything back, retail prices barely budged. Coffee shops didn't lower their menu boards. Grocery aisles didn't roll back their new normal pricing. And now people are asking the uncomfortable question, were tariffs just an excuse? Did companies take advantage of a political moment to lock in higher prices permanently? Or is this simply what happens when a fragile global supply chain gets shaken too many times in a row? Some people argue, well, businesses are just protecting themselves from uncertainty. Others say, They use tariffs as cover to raise prices they never intended to lower. It's a debate that's heating up in comment sections everywhere, because the consumer feels the impact while corporations control the narrative. Add this to the fact that specialty coffees require hand picking, fermentation, grading, and precise roasting. Layers of craftsmanship that naturally cost more. And you end up with a price structure that feels impossible to escape. Meanwhile, the people who actually grow the beans still capture almost none of the value, even as retailers raise prices faster than they ever reduce them. So when you look at your cup and wonder why it suddenly feels like a luxury item, remember this coffee has become the perfect storm of supply shocks, economic pressure, and political decisions. And depending on who you ask, that storm was either inevitable or exploited. Coffee is woven into your daily life in ways you barely notice until the price jumps. It shows up in your local cafe when you grab a cup on the way to work, in the office drip machine that keeps meetings alive, in the grocery store aisle where you instinctively reach for your usual brand, and even in the Nespresso pods you pop into the machine at home. Maybe you've treated yourself to a bag of single origin beans from a specialty roaster. Or maybe you've watched Starbucks raise its prices yet again and wondered why your go-to-drink keeps creeping up. The truth is, coffee isn't just a beverage. It's the fuel that powers the American workday. It keeps commuters awake at 7 a.m., students focused during late-night study sessions, and parents functioning during those early morning school routines. And because coffee is a daily ritual, not a once-in-a-while indulgence, you feel the price hikes immediately. If the cost of a luxury handbag rises, you shrug it off because you weren't going to buy one anyway. But when your daily 3.57 cup becomes 4.10, or your favorite bag of beans jumps from 9 to 14, it hits you every single day. That's why rising coffee prices are more than an economic story. They're a societal shockwave. When coffee gets expensive, workplaces feel the strain, families notice the shift, and millions of people adjust their routines. And whether you drink 1 cup or 4 cups a day, the impact is unavoidable. Coffee has become a cost you can't escape, and that's what makes its rising price so powerful and so disruptive. Concerns are growing this morning for small businesses as they start to feel the impacts of President Trump's tariffs. Right now, coffee shops say the new reality is a bitter one. The U.S. currently imports 99% of its coffee. Some shop owners say they've started renegotiating with growers in countries like Nicaragua, but they'll still have to start paying more for their beans. Some fear this will put many small shops out of business. Now they're calling for some reprieve. Completely throws off our calculations on what's fair. It's still in flux. I can't really say we're going to raise the price by 25 cents or 50 cents. It could be that we try to absorb a little bit. What I'd like to see is the coffee being exempted from the tariffs because we can't grow coffee in the United States. It's just impossible, and Americans love their coffee. The prices could vary depending on where coffee beans are coming from. And now, if you're watching us in Europe, you may well be enjoying a very strong coffee. It's early morning, and a good cup of coffee is required. But is our traditional picker-upper in danger of becoming a luxury as prices are soar? Well, like other foods, the cost of coffee has gone through the roof on international markets. The price of coffee, especially Arabica, has seen dramatic increases. In some cases, going up by 70% over the past year. Jason Archianpong from the Fair Trade Foundation told me why farmers are unable to keep up with demand. It's a supply and demand issue, right? But fundamentally with farmers are just unable to supply the beans that we so greatly need, right? For years of underpayment, they've been unable to invest in their farms. And then you couple that with the fact you now have climate change, which is causing real devastation across many farms. You've now got a recipe for disaster. And so the demand has remained high. Consumers were still drinking our coffee, but farmers themselves are just unable to supply the beans because of the issues that they face right now on the ground. So consequently, the price of coffee is going up and up in America. I'm assuming are huge consumers, and for them they're seeing even higher prices because of tariffs. I think there are a range of factors as well, sort of geopolitical tensions, which are causing challenges across shipping routes in terms of supplying coffee out of regions such as East Africa. Does that mean the choice to go sustainable is less likely? In fact, the choice to go sustainable is even more so important as we see when we look at pricing at the moment and the challenges we're facing. The issue is mainly because farmers have not been invested in. They have been unable to invest in their farms and are now tackling real key issues on the ground. Recent studies have shown that by 2050, nearly 50% of the global surface area currently used for coffee farming may no longer be suitable. Coffee is more than a drink. It's a lifeline woven through the hands of farmers, pickers, processors, traders, roasters, and baristas. An entire global chain of people whose livelihoods depend on a plant that simply does not thrive in heat, drought, or instability. As climate change accelerates and economies tighten, coffee turns into something bigger than a beverage. It becomes a mirror reflecting the world we live in, fragile, interconnected, and deeply human. So the next time you sip your morning cup, pause for a moment. That coffee traveled across continents, survived droughts, tariffs, and one of the most volatile markets in decades. It passed through dozens of hands, each adding labor, skill, and sacrifice before finally reaching yours. And if we want that cup to remain affordable, or even available, we have to support the people who grow it, the very people who absorb the most risk yet earn the least reward. What should we break down next? Comment your idea below. Why is it so expensive? If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what topic you would like me to cover in the next video. See you next time.